All right, everybody. Imagine having a job where you have freedom in where you work, what you work on, and have monetary freedom as well. While this may sound too good to be true, this is a career and lifestyle approach that indie hackers have been experimenting with and succeeding at for quite some time. Today, I talked to Anthony Castrio, who describes his story and how he got started with entrepreneurship, took the leap towards building products in the open, his approach for marketing, and what you can start doing if you want to become an indie hacker yourself. It's going to be fun, so let's get started. Anthony, great to meet with you. So, for the audience, please introduce yourself.
Hello, audience. My name is Anthony. I'm a digital nomad, indie hacker, and newsletter writer most recently.
So I've been following your work for quite some time now, and it's always really been fascinating because the idea of someone being a digital nomad, going traveling around the world, and also being able to create really interesting content, get others excited about it, and building a community and a company around all these, very nice topics is really interesting. And that's one of the things I want to dive deeper into you with. So at the very beginning, let's get started. So do you see yourself as a developer, a computer programmer, entrepreneur? Like if you had to bucket yourself in one, tag, what would it be?
I think entrepreneur is probably the best fit. I'm definitely coming from a programming background, but nothing in my business right now uses code, so I haven't actually really coded anything in the last 6 to 9 months. Hoping to change that again soon. So I actually went through a big process at the beginning of last year and the year before of getting rid of code, throwing out things that I'd custom coded that I didn't, turns out, weren't like core to my business, and getting everything as much as possible over to no code. Um, and then now that I've freed up so much of my time from doing that, because now I don't have to maintain all these things that I was before, I want to build new projects that do use code again to flex those muscles that are starting to perhaps atrophy. I hope not, but perhaps.
You're
So
always one
founder,
Google search away,
entrepreneur.
I guess, from having the answer.
Yeah.
And like Chat GPT and other AI-based solutions could maybe even help you either jog your memory or
Oh,
just
for
do things
sure, for
for you.
sure.
Yep.
But it's kind of
So
funny because my little brother is learning to code now, and he's like, I can't code. I have to Google everything. And I'm like, no, you're doing it right. That's actually that's exactly what you should do. But he has like paper tests and things because he's still in college, so he has to
yeah, no.
memorize functions and things. He's like, when I'm just working on a project, I can get it done. I just Google my way through it, and then in school, I can't like remember exactly the thing that I need to write, so I get like docked for random syntax errors. But actually, once you get to the professional level, you're just right back to Googling. So
Exactly. There's this artificial hump that we all have to cross through where you're doing these things because you think that this is the way you have to get your brain to remember things, basically memorizing in many ways. And then once you cross over that hurdle, you're back to doing exactly the way you do it. It's like, I know the big concepts. Knowing what to Google, like what keywords to string together, is like the most important part, I think, of like any software developer's job these days, is that
yeah,
remember all these things.
that's what I
And
love
also,
about
of course,
entrepreneurship in part is it's like outcome based, right? Not output
exactly.
based. So you only really the only person judging you at the end of the day is your customer. If they're happy and paying you, you're doing it right.
Exactly. You cross through all those hurdles. And it's funny how few people fully recognize that. You see people who are like working in companies or working in software development and so on. It's like, why are you writing line of code? Like, go really deep into why you're doing every single activity. The chances are that at the end of the long line of how your input contributes to your business success is there's a customer, they have a problem, you're solving it. How you're solving it is by what you're providing here. That customer does not care that you remembered that you memorized how to reverse a linked list or like sort some numbers or so on, or that you went to
Yeah,
Google and copied and pasted it, or you asked an AI assistant to do it for you. All they care about is this helping me solve my business problems so that I can, grow my customer base and help my customers be happy and have my, lifestyle be maintained and so on. So let's get back to the very beginning. You mentioned you see yourself as
sure.
an entrepreneur. So what sparked that? How, most people don't wake up every day going like, I want to do entrepreneurial things. So what sparked that in you?
Well, it's kind of related. Like I always wanted to kind of break it down past the like what is my job description to like why are we doing this thing, and you don't get that kind of leeway usually as an employee. You're usually hired to do a specific thing, like you get hired to be a programmer, and you kind of need to stay in the programmer box. You can't just jump out of that box willy-nilly based on like, oh, what this customer actually needs is for us to delete everything we've done and just it's just a spreadsheet, and we're just kind of collect their information and send them a link once a week or whatever it is, you know. But as an entrepreneur, you can make that call, and you can, especially as a solo entrepreneur, you can throw out half your business if you need to in order to make the customer happy. Like probably the customer as more of like an abstract entity versus just one customer, right? You don't want to throw out half your business for just one customer. But so I had some internships. I had one full-time job, but pretty soon after college, like within 6 months, I was freelancing and just like finding my own clients and working for them. So that was when I kind of my first like real foray into entrepreneurship at that point, where I'm making my own way through the world, finding clients. Almost kind of went the agency route, had some bigger projects, and then decided this is not really for me. Started looking for like a potential SaaS idea, some kind of software product that I could bring to market. Never found one. What I did instead is, while I was trying to figure out what to build and how to build it, I started organizing indie hackers meetups, because I really like, for the same reason that I kind of reject the whole system of like having a job, and that really didn't speak to me. Neither did raising money, because it kind of felt like jumping through the same hoops once again. Like, if I want a job, I have to like go apply for it and convince someone that they should hire me. If I want to raise money, I have to like go apply at all these VC firms and convince them to fund me. I didn't want to do either of those things. So the indie hacker method of bootstrapping your business is what really appealed to me. So I started organizing these meetups because I was already nomading at this point. As soon as I had remote freelance work, I immediately left the country and started traveling. And I was organizing meetups wherever I was. So I organized one in Medellin, Colombia, helped organize one in Mexico City. I was helping out in like Montreal and Boston. Like wherever I was, Indie Hacker Meetup was there. But after, 3 or 4 of these, I was like, this kind of sucks actually, because I keep leaving my friends behind. I make friends, create this whole community, and then leave. And then that community probably doesn't survive because I wasn't there long enough to like mentor new leadership to like keep it going. So it just kind of dies when I leave. And that was a bummer. So I started a virtual community. So we had like Indie Hackers Medellin, Indie Hackers Boston, Indie Hackers Mexico City, Indie Hackers Worldwide. That started to take on a life of its own and just became Indie Worldwide, which is a community I still run like 4 years later.
Was it freedom to do your own thing that made you pursue not working for a formal company and just doing your own thing?
Yeah, freedom is definitely a driving force. And I found from talking to like a lot of entrepreneurs, like that's the main thing I do. It's like talk to founders for this community. Almost all of them are motivated by freedom. And it's like I'm finding there's like multiple axes of freedom that people are seeking in their life. And being a founder, especially a bootstrapped one, satisfies almost all of them, right? So it's like freedom, like financial freedom, obviously, but freedom to choose what you're working on. There's like artistic freedom, like freedom of expression. And then there's like, where can I live? So like mobility freedom. And if you're a nomadic indie hacker, you're at the intersection of almost every possible axis of freedom that you could come up with. So I think it's a very aspirational place to be in. So a lot of people that are founders are coming from one of those axes, if not all of them, of freedom. And this is where they end up.
Isn't there a fear of leaving a stable, well-paying job to then go on your own? How did you overcome that?
So I've always been more scared of getting stuck in a cliche life, I guess. Like that idea of doing something that's been done before filled me with terror of like, just what is the point of my existence if I'm going to do something that's millions of people are already doing and don't seem to be all that happy about. So that was the stick poking me. And then how I so there was a little bit of okay, I am leaving a lot of money on the table by doing this and not getting a more traditional job where I can like bank 6 figures a year or whatever, guaranteed. So to overcome that, like my heuristic is, did I end this year with at least $1 more net worth than last year. So I just don't want, I want to at least not be losing money. And so as long as I do that, I feel good. And I did, just 6 months of being an engineer in San Francisco was enough to give me enough runway to give it a shot. I think by the time I left, I covered my student loan debt and then had like another 20K in the bank or something. And I felt like, okay, that's enough. As long as I can end next year with $20,001, then at least I'm not going backwards. So at least I'm covering my expenses and growing. And I figured as long as that's true, eventually I'll figure it out and cover all my expenses. But I kept freelancing as well, and so that was pretty lucrative as well. And it's kind of like I see freelancing as like a stepping stone to building a bigger business. And so I call it the bootstrapper seed round is part-time freelancing.
Do you think the skills you learn as a freelancer in being able to market your services, market yourself, be able to learn the ins and outs of working with clients, does it play a big role in helping you be bootstrapping your own companies?
Yeah, a huge role because and I think freelancing is a great first business for people who want to be entrepreneurs to do because you learn how to run a business, like how to set up legal entity, how to do your banking potentially, um, and most importantly, you learn how to sell yourself, and you learn hopefully how to sell yourself at like a high level. Like if you're a software engineer, then as a freelancer, you might be doing deals in the 5 to 6 figures, which is great practice because hopefully when you're building a SaaS, especially as a bootstrapper, we often want to go more towards like B2B. It can be really helpful to kind of understand how companies think about spending money and what where their budgets come from and what they'll spend money on and how to convince them to spend it with you. Really good skill to have.
You mentioned B2B and SaaS a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Was it your goal to ultimately find a way to sustain your hobbies and your interests and apply that in the B2B SaaS space? Or was it more of just an area that you wanted to get into because there's the stability that a recurring large company provides, even and while allowing you to maintain the many degrees of freedom that you also called out earlier?
Yeah, I think like entrepreneurship itself has been my hobby since I was a kid. It's like always what I was reading about, what I was interested in, which is probably how I ended up in such a meta business of like a community for entrepreneurs. Just because like entrepreneurship itself has always been so fascinating to me. Like probably from well, actually, I remember um, in preschool they were like, "What job do you want to be?" And so at 4 years old, I said entrepreneur. The answer never changed.
That's actually pretty impressive that you had an inkling of what you want to do early on and that you
I think
managed.
it's a good thing it was early on because I don't think I'm naturally good at it. I had to like trial and error. I needed all 20 years, to figure it out.
Yeah, which is what is often the cornerstone of success is actually just repeating a process and iterating and learning from all of that. That's actually pretty impressive. And so that you have, indie worldwide, your business is all about, you go to all these places, you travel, you meet,
Hmm.
create meetups, and you interact with all these individuals, and then because you're essentially communities are often built around central individuals, and because you're no longer there, you move to a different place, for example. And at that point, because a central person is no longer there, the community slowly just starts to kind of, go away. And so you had the idea of like, let me make this a virtual kind of a setup so that no matter where you are, you're still able to interact with all the people you met and are able to do. How were you able to, go from that's the idea that I'm going to solve for to making it monetizable where now you're, actually people are paying you for the privilege of being able to still have you be their central community leader?
Yeah, this is a good example of how I have had no idea what I was doing. Because for the first year and a half, it was free. And I explicitly did not want to charge any money for it because I was still searching for my real idea, whatever that was going to be. And I didn't want to I felt like I can't be an entrepreneur and my business is an entrepreneurship community. Like, how will people? Why would someone join a community where the guy's only business is the community itself, right? Like, there's no. So the whole time I was working on other startup ideas, like freelancing, still building and launching other small stuff. But in the end, the only thing that survived was the community itself. And so about 2 years in, um, I was like at first we were just a monthly Zoom call event. At some point we added the Slack group. And so I was just trying to think of like, how can I get more of these members to meet each other? Because like there's a big difference between an audience, which is like everyone knows you, and a community where people might not even know you. You know, they know they're there for each other. And I really wanted to build the second thing, a community. And in order to get those kind of network effects, I was just thinking of like, what is the most straightforward way I can get two founders who are in this community to meet and talk to each other and become friends. So what I started to do is, you remember if you remember Lunch Club, when we
Yes.
launched, I was calling it Artisanal Lunch Club. So we were a lunch club just for startup founders in Indie Worldwide, and once a week. So you tell me some stuff about you, and then once a week I introduce you to somebody else in the community mostly based on how much money you're making and like what industry. And that took off right away. Like 100 people signed up for it, but it was still free. But a couple members are like, "Hey, buddy, have you thought about charging money for this one? I would pay you money for it. I would pay you, $40 or whatever for this to make sure this keeps existing." So I decided, okay, sure, I'll charge money. So then I charged like $40 to sign up for it one time. The first year we made, I think, like 10 grand. And so I was still freelancing. That definitely didn't cover my expenses. But that's when we started making money. The community itself stayed free for like another year, I think, before I started charging a membership fee to join. And didn't even really set up recurring payments until I think early last year. It took me a while to figure it out. But somehow I've kind of stumbled my way into it. I think just the fact that I've kept doing it, it just has had time to slowly grow. It's never been exponential. It's been linear, if anything. So the first year we did like 10 grand, last year 20 grand. This year we'll probably do like 50 grand for the
So you
business.
mentioned that you were doing all this on the side while searching for your real idea. At what point were you like, you know what, my real idea is actually this. This is the thing I'm going to be spending my time on. I'm no longer focusing on trying to find my real idea.
Yeah, it was after I started charging membership fees for the community itself, and people were willing to pay. And I was like, oh, I guess I could have just done this years ago, and this could have been my business. So might as well go all in. And then it took me another month still to actually stop freelancing and just dedicate myself full time to trying to grow the Indie Worldwide business and make money from memberships.
Yeah. So what does your day look like? You wake up, what do when you come to entrepreneurship, like, your business itself, like, what are the things you do in a typical day?
Yeah, it's fairly hectic at the moment because I just moved to New York, so my expenses are up, and so I need to kind of catch up on the revenue side and make more money. So I've been hustling lately. It's like up at uh, before 9, um, at least an hour probably just spent answering messages, so like DMs on Twitter, and in the Indie Worldwide Slack, and like posting things in there to keep that lively. Then there's like setting up events and stuff because we'll do usually some kind of meetup every week at this point. So like it would be like a mastermind or a Q&A with some kind of founder, maybe an interview like this. Um, and then we do these group challenges. So last year we ran one that was get 100 users in 100 days, and everyone raced to do that. This year we're doing shorter challenges. So we just had a 30-day challenge end last month, which was based around growing newsletter subscribers. Then now it's no, coding is no longer a big part of my day because I managed to uncode everything. So it used to be like, oh, I want to make an update to the website, like I have to edit the HTML and then deploy that change, and that was a bummer. So I switched over to no code tools. Now that transition is done, most of my day is writing. So I'm writing the Indie Worldwide newsletter, which goes out once a week, and it's going to be twice a week starting next week. And now I'm writing a newsletter about AI called, it's like robots eating your brain. So boteatbrain.com is my new AI newsletter. That's a daily newsletter. So I'm writing pretty much every day for that. And then I'm writing a ton on Twitter as well, because Twitter has always been like a really, probably my number one marketing channel across everything I do. So like over the last year, I really focused a lot on Twitter growth and managed to grow my account by about 10,000 subscribers or followers. So it's like 13K now, which has been really good for distribution. So just writing a lot on Twitter now, on two newsletters. Somehow I went from programmer to writer, and I'm not sure exactly when when it happened, because most of my marketing is somehow writing, whether it's like making a post on indiehackers.com or Reddit or Hacker News or wherever. It's like a lot of words. It's a good thing I'm a fast typer.
I mean, if you subscribe to the theory that programming is art and that writing is
Mm-hmm.
also art, so it all comes from the same part of your brain that is responsible for creativity, then that went from being a programmer to being a writer, I think is makes a lot
I
of
just stayed an
fun.
artist. I would argue entrepreneurship, especially the indie hacker style, definitely qualifies as art as well.
Correct. You know, any outside of ignoring the textbook definitions, any kind of a thing that you do where you're defining your own path forward, as opposed to following a predefined path, which means that a different part of your brain is being exercised, that clearly
Yeah.
does fall under art. So it makes a lot of sense in that regard. And so I'm just curious, no code tools, used to replace all the coding you used to do. Which tools are you
Mm-hmm.
using?
A ton, probably too many. So this is something I've been thinking about lately. I feel like to be a good salesperson, you kind of have to be like easy to sell to as well. And so as I've gotten better at selling, I get easier and easier to sell to. So I pay for like duplicates of tools just in order to try them all, and because they all sound cool. And my community is like full of entrepreneurs, and so they all have something to pitch me, and I want to support them all and buy all their tools.
Yeah.
So at any given time, I'm often using like two or three things. To do the same thing, like newsletters, for example. One of my newsletters is on ConvertKit, the other's on Beehive. I have a Substack too, and then for the like my website itself is currently hosted on Card for the landing page, but every other page is hosted on Feather, which one of our members, Banu, builds. And my payment system is through Outseta, which is built by Jeff, and which then uses Stripe in the back end. And my I used to manage sponsorship inquiries via like a Google Sheet, but recently was able to switch to another Indie Worldwide members product, Passion Fruit, which is run by Jens and his team in Berlin. Um, what else do we use? Zapier, a lot of Glue. Google Sheets is always my go-to when I need a database, or I'll use Airtable if I need other people to input data because I can like type the columns, which makes it easier to like hire someone to fill that out. Notion is a big one. So like Feather sits on top of Notion. Notion is also a no code tool. It's where all my notes go, but that's also then where I'm writing like a blog post that goes on the Indie Worldwide website will go on there. Um, then there's like video tools. So like we host our meetings on usually either a Butter we started to use or another tool built by an Indie Worldwide member, which is called Upmeet. That's built by Reese. So as much as possible, I like to use my members' products. Even I think when I send you my scheduling link, getscheduler.com, that's built by Ricky, who's also an Indie Worldwide member. So
No, that's actually really
I'm like
impressive.
full stack Indie Worldwide founders. Yeah.
No, you're fully, yeah, no, it's great because of all the tools you listed, except for like maybe one or two, many of them were ones that qualified as like having come from people that built it, which is actually really impressive because when we look back at like, let's imagine that 10 years ago, that someone wanted to be an indie hacker and, travel and do all these kind of things, the lack of tooling may have hindered a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
scale at least they're able to get. This even imagining, for example, that you go to one city, create a meetup group, find people, make connections, and then maintain that going to another city because you have like very simple tools for being able to manage the community, like Slack, for example, or even set up video calls and things like that. The cost and the ability to even do that in a technically feasible way by just one person would have been so difficult that you're able to do
Yeah.
all these now. I think it's partially right idea at the right time because you have first mover advantage, I think, in terms of like having started this process and others can come in later, but they're going to be riding the wave of the path you've already blazed.
I hope so. That sounds nice. I want to have a moat.
So you mentioned you're doing a lot of writing these days.
Yeah.
How do you come up with your ideas?
Um, so for the Indie Worldwide newsletter, the most of the content is just here's what's going on in the community, like here's what's up. Um, and so my ideas for what we should do in the community almost always come back to how do I get more founders to meet each other? Like how do I get more of my members to be friends with each other. Ideally, every person in Indie Worldwide would know at least like four other people, because then that's really a community. Then you're at our size, which is about 200 active founders in the community right now. If everyone knows like five people, then you're pretty much only one step away from anyone else in the community, which it's pretty tight. Um, that that feels like, because people call a lot of things community that aren't actually communities. Like if you've ever joined a Slack group before, chances are it's probably dead or it felt dead at some point. Um, Chances are you never actually made friends with anybody. But they're like several of the people I would call my among my best friends. Like if I got married, I'd invite them to my wedding. I met through Indie Worldwide, and some of them I've never met in person. Some of them I've only met through Indie Worldwide, and I don't think I'm the only member who can say that, um, which is kind of the goal there. So that's where my ideas for Indie Worldwide stuff comes from. Body Brain, which is about AI. That's just I'll just maybe spend half an hour a day when I'm done with everything else, just going through like I've got like a list of like a dozen different sources of potential news. So I'm looking for like new product launches, breaking research, like the latest paper, um, anything that I think is interesting. Because I started this newsletter mostly to learn about AI. Like I took some classes in college, but that was a while ago now, and I'm trying to like catch up and learn and hopefully build some cool tools with AI. But I figured, hey, if I'm learning anyway, maybe I can turn the thing I want to do into a business. And so I figured, hey, well, what does like getting paid to learn look like? Probably looks a lot like a newsletter. So I just started writing this Body Brain newsletter, and yeah, the content just comes from the news basically. I just see what's new and write about it.
Is your monetization strategy for Body Brain to be just subscription based, or do you have other plans?
It's a free newsletter, and we make money from ads.
Okay. So, and advertisers reach you because they know you from like the reach your newsletter gets. So you know, it's a self fulfilling
Yeah,
cycle almost.
hopefully soon. So far, all my uh, sponsors, minus one or two, have come through Twitter. So that comes back to like the value of writing on Twitter, is that that's basically like I did a promo a couple weeks ago where I wanted to enforce some more consistency on myself, because it's supposed to be a daily newsletter. It's more like a monthly newsletter, so not great consistency. I needed some kind of forcing function to like actually make sure that I had to do the thing I said I wanted to do. And so I figured, well, if people pay me, like I almost never let them down, because then it's not for me, it's for them. So I'm gonna just try to sell out all of my ads, at least like 3 per week. Then I'll have to write. And so luckily, by that point, I'd found passion fruit, which made it really easy to do this. I was able to drop my prices to from they were pretty cheap already, but I dropped them to dirt cheap. So at first I was selling ads for like only $5 an ad, which is very, very cheap. So I was able to sell out all of February, all of March. We've got like one slot left in April. I just kept, after each month sold out, I just doubled the prices. So the price will be like $40 a shout out now that April sells out. And then so that was good because that was money in the door, and then also forced me to write. And I forget actually what the question was I was answering, but that was the answer to it. I hope.
No, it was basically what your strategy was for monetizing the newsletter. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. So I was able to sell it out just through tweeting. Um, as we get a little bit bigger, I'll have to start doing outreach, which is fine.
yeah, because it seems like you're an indie hacker, but you have two big projects essentially. Indie Worldwide and also the Body Brain, which started off as you learning and trying things out, but by having advertisers and adding that extra layer of, I guess, pressure to make sure that you keep them happy. Now you
Yeah,
have two things that are really going into to make this all work.
yeah, yeah. Body Brain is, um, I guess it's not profitable yet because I'm like experimenting with paid ads. I'm like experimenting with like hiring researchers and things in order to scale it faster. It took me a while. Like I started it last year, kind of as I said, like put it down for a bit, picked it back up, but finally kind of figured out a format that works really good, that people like to read, that people are sharing, uh, and a pitch that gets people to sign up. So now it's growing fast. So last week we passed 1,000 subscribers. I think by the end of next week we'll have passed 2,000. We're like really growing quickly now. And so I'm investing money to try to get it to go as fast as possible so that we can get to like 10, 20K. Because at that point, we can actually start reaching out to bigger sponsors, and it'll be much more profitable. And I want to get there as quickly as possible, but bootstrapped way.
Yeah, no, you got to start small, then go bigger from there. You mentioned marketing a few times. What you mentioned Twitter has been pretty effective in terms of marketing, but I also know I think in one of your tweets you mentioned that you also tried like a Facebook ad and you saw the results were quite good on that as well.
Yep.
What do you think is the most effective form of marketing that you found so far for what your both your products?
Um, so for Bot Eat Brain, it's a little bit more straightforward because I'm just trying to acquire subscribers for less money than they're worth as a subscriber. So a free subscriber for a newsletter uh, is usually you can charge about $30 per 1,000 subscribers per ad slot. And so for a daily newsletter, that works out to about $1 per subscriber per month. So if I can acquire them for less than $2, basically, then it should pay back within 2 months eventually. Once I'm able to charge that much for the ads,
Yeah.
because right now I'm under, like I said, I'm undercharging for the ads, so they're not actually worth that much. But I am assuming that they will be. So as long as I can acquire a subscriber for like less than $2, then it should be profitable to pay for that subscriber, whether through Facebook ads or through buying ad slots in other newsletters, or what I was able to do for most of my growth so far is trade shoutouts with other newsletters, because I already have one big newsletter that has, because Indie Worldwide has over the years grown into like a 5,000 reader newsletter as well. And so at the beginning, what I would do is like trade a shout out in my existing big newsletter for a similarly sized newsletter, and each one of those might bring me 10 to up sometimes 50 subscribers. Uh, Indie Worldwide, a lot of Twitter. Usually, what I'll do is just whatever I'm thinking about goes on Twitter, trying to make it writing in a way that's like fun to read and is interesting and like tells a story. And then every now and then I'll find an idea that really hits, and then I'll expand on that into an article, and then I'll find ways to use that article and like on different websites. I'll post it to like Indie Hackers and Reddit and all these other places in order to get the most legs that I can out of the idea, and that usually does pretty well. Um, Occasionally, I'll do like product marketing, like build some kind of product related to what I'm building, like a free product people can sign up for that is inbound, because products are really easy to market when they're new, because you can do like product hunt, beta list, Twitter itself. There's all, even Indie Worldwide you can launch products in. So there's all these different ways to get eyeballs on a new product. So like when we do these challenges, I'll market it as a product, like Speedrun 1000 challenge, 100 100. When I started to do the introductions, the one-on-ones, for a while I was calling that. That was under a separate brand at first called Founders Club. So each of these things is like a product launch that itself brings in new Indie Worldwide members.
You mentioned that Twitter has been a pretty effective source for marketing. Like repeating myself a little bit
Mm-hmm.
here, but
Yeah.
I also heard from so many people that the Twitter algorithm makes it very difficult to drive people to using things that take you away from their site itself. If you're going to be posting more content there that keeps people there, great. But if you're going to be
Yeah.
linking to your own newsletter, your own services, you're at a disadvantage. How do you work around that?
Yeah. So first, you kind of have to get good at Twitter itself, which is helped a lot by having good analytics. And so, like, the native Twitter analytics aren't that great, but there's a bunch of third-party services out there that will help you analyze your tweets and see what performs well. Personally, the one I use is called Typefully, built by Fabrizio, and that one is great because I can sort by whatever engagement metric I'm optimizing for. If you want the biggest reach, go for comments. But if you want followers, then you want to optimize for profile clicks. And so as I was writing a lot on Twitter, I was analyzing my tweets to see like what style of tweet was leading to the outcome I wanted, and finding out ways to give Twitter more and more of that. So that's how I built my following, and like kind of optimized that and learned what worked. And then in order to get people to sign up for your thing en masse, you want to just like you got to figure out some way to turn it into a story. Especially with indie hackers, we're usually like finding some way to tell our own entrepreneurial journey in an interesting way as a story, so that people start to buy into what we're trying to do, and hopefully we're doing something valuable for them that they can then sign up for. And that's the way to turn your like offsite links into like engaging content. But even if you're a small account, even if you don't want to like really invest in building up a big presence, I think it's still useful to like make a nice profile and like tweet a little bit and like make some friends on Twitter, just because the DMs itself can give you access to like really direct access to a lot of people that you want to talk to, people you might not be able to get to even read your message on other platforms will see your Twitter DM as long as you're not spamming them. Like you don't want to
Yeah.
like in your cold DM send a link ever. You just want to like say like, hey, like this is me, this is what I'm about, or like this is why I think you're cool, and that can open up a lot of doors. I've noticed response rates are probably higher now that my following is higher, but I think that's a function of not the numbers so much. It's just people have seen my face before at this point because of all the impressions I've had on the platform. So people kind of know who I am there, but it worked just fine when I was like around 1,000 subscribers as well. Like, just reaching out and sounding like a human goes a really long way, and the access it gives you is really good. But you could probably say the same thing for a good cold email or like a LinkedIn DM as well. If you just learn what like how to behave on those platforms, and you can do well there too.
Yep, it seems like every platform has its own like unwritten rules on what
Yeah,
successful content there looks like. So, I think have you looked into like LinkedIn? Only reason I bring it up is that you think, your audience is founders and entrepreneurs, and LinkedIn often likes to be the central source for all kinds of activities like that.
yeah. It's I've been trying to post more on LinkedIn. It's really hard for me because it can be so cringy there, and it's like Twitter is definitely a sort of performance as well, but people are usually more casual, and especially like the DMs and stuff you get are either spam or just like casual, like heartfelt messages. Like they actually feel like people are just trying to be friends on Twitter. LinkedIn, everything is always like this long-winded story where like you're walking down the street and you trip over a dog and you pet it and you give it food, and then you finally get to your job interview, and who is the interviewer? It's the dog. The dog was the hiring manager, and that's how I got my job at Google and became a six-figure per month engineer. And um, it turns my stomach a little bit. But I'm learning to participate on LinkedIn and hopefully trying to bring a little bit of Twitter culture over there where it's
Yeah, there's a great article by, I don't know if you follow him. I think it's Trunk Fan. He's a pretty famous poster of like memes and all these things. He actually
yeah,
wrote an
that's probably
article
where
on
I
like
got the dog story.
yeah, I think so. And he wrote a great article on like why LinkedIn is so cringe, and he like summarized all the points about what makes it less appealing. As a person who wants to just share good content when you're competing against so much of the noise and so much of the just that
Yeah.
typical influencer kind of content, which is like cookie cutter in many ways. So no, I
You
hear
could
you
say the
on
same
that.
thing about TikTok too, where a lot of it's really quite cringy, and I think the cringe from that comes from sort of the same place where it's like people are copying the style but not the substance,
Yeah.
and that's what makes it feel cringy. And I'm sure I'm guilty of doing the same at some point on Twitter, but eventually I learned how to give my own take and like actually add something.
Have you ever paid for Twitter's promotional tools for like you can boost the post, you can and choose do you want to increase engagement, increase subscribers? Have you experimented with that?
Not on my personal account. I tried it recently for the first time on the Body Brain account, but I didn't find it to be worthwhile. At least the ones I ran. Um, Maybe if you're just trying to like, because like I tried to use that to see if it would be an effective way to get relevant followers for the account, but they were very low quality follows. Like it was anonymous accounts and things that looked like bots to me. So I only did a couple days of it and was like, nah, not worth it. And then I wouldn't recommend ever doing it on a personal account, um, because you'll just probably, I think the same reason, you'll just end up with a bunch of low quality followers.
Yeah. No, no, that was my personal experience as well. Is that I tried experimenting with like advertising on Twitter with the using the little boost my post button feature or whatever. Same thing. Like the followers were far more lower quality, and even look like the accounts may not even be real people. Like I don't know if that's
Yeah.
like so it's just really bizarre in seeing all that. So you mentioned quality of followers, and
Mm-hmm.
there's always a tension though, because I used to do advertising heavily on my blog and on my newsletter. I removed all that a short while ago. Almost like 8, 9 years ago, actually, mostly because you know the hassle wasn't really worth it to a certain extent. And it was always a tension because I still do every year or so. I go through my follower accounts and look at like how many of them actually read an email, engaged with any of the content I've done, and if they haven't, I just remove them completely from the
Mm,
platform to maintain that quality. Advertisers, though, they care about that, of course, but they also care about quantity of
yeah.
followers. Have you encountered that tension, and what do you do about it?
Yeah, I would love to just remove every, because you can track who opens and clicks, but a lot of my users are really tech savvy, so they block open and click tracking, and so I want to remove, like, batch remove people, but I'm afraid of losing the ones who are real readers. So I ConvertKit has a nice article showing you like how you can create, at least on their platform, like your cold subs, and then you can like send out an email with a link that people click to remove them from the cold sub list, and then you can hopefully just remove the people who actually don't care. But I haven't done it yet because there's some tension there of like, yeah, but that 5,000 sounds a lot better than 4,400. So maybe I'll wait until removing the cold sub still keeps me above 5,000 or something, just because it is like a psychological thing. Like there's like a number psychology where people just like certain numbers, and 5 sounds so much bigger than 4.5. Uh, so
Yeah,
it's probably not worth it until I can stay above the round number.
it's tough, and especially if you've been doing something for a very long time, you evolve, your content evolves, and the content you might be writing right now may not be relevant to the person who signed up to your content, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, or even a year ago. Actually, if you look at the speed at which AI has moved from like being more academic to now being commercialized, and every startup can do something really cool and solve a problem by just wrapping existing AI models. And it's always a tension I get into. And then it also gets into the algorithms as well, because they often look at like you have X number of followers, what percentage of them actually engage with your content. If you have a lot of followers, but very few of them actually engage with your content, maybe you're not posting interesting things anymore. So we're not going to keep showing you. And so I don't know what the answer is, but it is a tension that I recognize all the time.
I had a friend who had a an old Twitter account that they were trying to like revitalize, and there's like tools. I think there's one from like SparkToro you can use that will analyze your followers and tell you how many of them are like bots or like um, likely to be real active people versus not. And the older your account is, the more likely that the people that were following you are no longer active. And so he noticed, I think like he had a high percentage of like inactive followers. So he ended up going through and just removing a bunch of them. It went from like 6,000 to like 3,000 or something in the end. And it didn't hurt. I don't think it hurt his reach at all, because they weren't active followers. So
Yeah, they
removing
weren't
them
reading the content
didn't.
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he didn't have that tension in the back of his head anymore of like, is this a real number or is it like a hollow number?
Yeah. No, that is definitely the big challenge here in terms of it. And so, what's next for you? You seem to have been doing all these various activities. You're doing two things right now. Is there a third one on the way that you might either merge into something or create something new from scratch?
I want to keep doing like product marketing. So, like, as I said, when I started this newsletter, like a lot of the intention of the newsletter is for me, Anthony, to learn about AI. And so I want to use all these APIs and things that I'm learning about and start like building mini projects. And the justification for me spending that time will be, it'll get more people to sign up to the newsletter. But then, I don't know, maybe one of them will turn out to be cool and useful and it'll become its own thing. But for now, I'm just going to try to not put too much pressure on it, think of them as marketing projects and do that. And by that way, my energy is still going towards the breadwinners, which is my newsletter and the indie worldwide community.
Perfect. So, last question: if someone wants to follow in your footsteps, what should they do?
Um, so the main thing you need to do is not run out of money. So as long as you're not running out of money, you're doing good. And there's like three ways ish you can do that. So like one is you build up a nest egg, maybe 4 ways. So like one is you live at home with your parents and they pay for your food and stuff, assuming you have like that kind of support system and can actually get work done in that environment, right? So then two is you work for a bit, save up some money. I think this is more or less the first route I chose. Build up enough of a nest egg that you can give yourself at least a year of like runway of time before you'll run out of money. And then third is like part-time work. So freelance a few hours a week, like see if, especially if you're an engineer, there's probably a lot of like freelance opportunities out there that can help you subsidize this. And then 4 is just get a normal job, the chillest job you can get, and then use your extra time and energy to start working on your project nights and weekends. And you usually don't want to go all in until you've made at least made one sale online, at least like end to end, built something, advertised it, got someone to pay you money, collected that money, because people often get stuck at one stage or another that stops them from making money. So with developers, it's usually they get stuck building and never learn to charge money. Which, I mean, that was my problem too for a long time. Is I was learning to charge people money as a freelancer, but charging people money for a product, like or access to a community, that was like a big mental hurdle, and a lot of people go through that. So you want to make sure you're past those hurdles before you quit by making at least some money, and then that proves the idea itself hopefully has enough potential to get you through. So combine them all if you can. Give yourself as much leeway as you can, and you can cut your expenses down a lot too by moving out of high cost of living cities while you're figuring these things out.
That's a perfect answer, Anthony. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all about indie hacking, the nomadic lifestyle, and how to scale and build products.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on. It was fun.